Hey, got another vid here. It's about Stephan Molyneux and Southern in New Zealand. It's part 2. It's another interview here. And we'll run through it as a review. And I'm going to read down through the comments because actually the whole lot of them are negative, which is quite something to see. Okay, so here we go.
Kia ora, I'm Miriam McCummell. It's the story of the week, the visit of controversial Canadians Southern and Stephan Molyneux. The alt-right duo spark fiery debate and protest wherever they go. And here, in Aotearoa, it's been no different. For many, their views amount to hate speech, which reinforces dangerous racist views. But for others, they're champions of free speech, agitators for open discussion and debate. You might not like what they have to say, but should they have the right to say it? Here's Tanya Page. I'm not leaving because of these people.
They can say whatever they like, and there's really nothing that any of us can do about it. The brain.
See, I'll just say at this point, the situation in New Zealand is completely different to the Northern Hemisphere. The situation in New Zealand is completely different to Australia, because we have the Treaty of Waitangi. Okay, and the political optics of the Treaty of Waitangi is, even though we're very different, together we make one country. Now that's an agreement between Maori and Pakeha, okay, not the immigrants, okay, but everyone has to toe that line, and so it's quite a remarkable thing because legally it's an absolute immutable brick wall for corporates. Corporates can't budget. They can't budget because this is our values. This is part of our values enshrined in stone, man, and law. And so we're actually very lucky that this was produced in our history. Now, Southern and Stephan Molyneux, before they came to New Zealand, right, they researched the situation in New Zealand. Okay, they researched it and they knew it was very different. And so I'll just say that at the outset. Okay, here we go.
Of a 25-year-old black man in the brain of a 25-year-old white guy, different size. Yeah.
This narrative is on the rise.
See, this is all character assassination up till they start talking. It's largely character assassination. See, they don't really start talking to here.
I love to be proven wrong.
12 and a half minutes of anti.
On their first visit down under, Canadians Southern and Stephan got exactly what they
3.5 minutes of them speaking in the interview.
Hundreds bought tickets.
She's awesome. She's got really cool political views.
Things that a lot of us are thinking that we don't really get to say.
But when they came here, they were shut down.
This rally is for us.
Their event cancelled at the last moment as a crowd gathered in central Auckland.
Why can't they come out in a forum like this so everybody can hear it? Why can't, what are they afraid of?
You know, when you're speaking hate and dividing people, that's not a New Zealand culture. It's not the New Zealand way.
I actually do think the speakers have a right to speak, but equally we should be allowed to show and speak that we oppose that.
For 5 days we've been challenged on this story about whether we should even be telling it and talking to them. I'm here at Friday's protest and the size of the crowd shows us the depth of feeling. We think it's an important discussion we should be having, that our society should be having. So here it is.
Hey guys.
Yeah, you see, now I know she just said what she just said, right? What if the country has the conventional wisdom that anxiety is wisdom and virtuous? So really that's what that big crowd was about. You know, you get the subject of, it's the subject of the relationship between courage and consciousness and anxiety. Okay, they're trying to maintain according to the political correctness of anxiety, the level of communication you're allowed. And these two from Canada, they seemingly want to talk about something that's taboo, man. You can't talk about anxiety, you know, because what they're saying, the political optics of what Stephan and Lauren are doing, is they are directly challenging the moral authority. You know, they're directly challenging anxiety as the moral authority. Okay, because that's why these subjects are taboo, and nobody can talk about them, and nobody can articulate anything about them. And half the reason that nobody can articulate what they feel about other races is because of what anxiety demands. It's because of their loyalty to anxiety that's the case. So if people didn't have any loyalty to anxiety, they wouldn't care what anxiety said or thought or wanted or what its aspirations are. They would just speak their mind. And so that's how I know. Lauren Southern, Stephan Molyneux, they're speaking out for consciousness, and everyone else who's against it is wanting to maintain the virtue, you know, that anxiety remains the moral authority, actually, right? Anyway.
Lauren Southern here with Stephan Molyneux. Can you say it for me? It's okay to be white?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself
Can you say
white.
it's okay to be white?
You wouldn't consider yourself white?
No.
What would you consider yourself?
Indigenous Māori.
Okay.
Okay.
She calls herself a journalist, he a philosopher. To sociologist Paul Spoonley, they represent a rising tide of resentment.
People who are feeling very anxious about what they see as these culture wars, and they're feeling that their country is being undermined, particularly by immigrants or by Muslims.
You will not replace us.
He says they're part of the alt-right.
The new incarnation of a ultra-nationalist and sometimes a white supremacist.
Now, I don't know about you, but, you know, transposing these things that have happened in the Northern Hemisphere into New Zealand, this is very political. This is political. This is a political flanking action. You know, all the two want is to be objective and to speak out for the cultural and spiritual welfare of their own people. Okay, and so to transpose this Northern Hemisphere stuff into this discussion about the free speech and things in New Zealand, this is actually really criminal, man. It's criminal. It's party to the wider corruption ring going on, that, you know, people are using replications of the function of anxiety to have control over society. Okay, and because it's party to it, the media are party to it.
Tradition.
But Paul describes Southern as more alt-right, light.
Lauren Southern is at the polite end of that spectrum.
She's horrific. Run for your life.
Massey University Professor Spoonley has researched the evolution of hate speech since the 70s.
You had a very full-on, crude racism. Now, when it comes to someone like Lauren Southern, you know, we have people who are articulate, who are thoughtful, and who then express similar views, but in a much more sophisticated and acceptable way.
Look at me. This is my campus now.
For many of us, just dipping into the internet and looking at some of these people, you think, well,
See, she just said that. Look at me. This is my campus now. See, this is the thing of it. This issue there where consciousness and then there's anxiety. Anxiety has a compulsion to control. Okay? And so this is why she's saying that this is my campus now, because she is going to be able to speak. Okay, so this proves, right, this proves consciousness is real, because that is the central goal. Okay, that is the central goal of all concerned. Okay, the anti-consciousness people, right? It is their central goal, because they express what they want as a Freudian slip by shutting down conversations everywhere, right? And it's been even made, it's even been popularised by the media to protest about it, and it's okay to be extreme. That's civil disobedience they're advocating, actually. What the media are advocating when they're promoting that it's okay to be highly disruptive to public speaking. Okay, that's civil disobedience, actually. Why have they forgot that? And so that's all very interesting how they how that little statement there, how I said in the previous video, consciousness can perceive extremely detailed nuances. Okay, and that's what I'm perceiving with that. One statement, this campus is mine now. Now that's exactly what I'm saying with that. You know, everyone needs to be honest about actually the depth of intellect that is present with what's going on, because the position of anxiety as conventional wisdom, there is no depth of intellect. There is only what anxiety thinks. Okay, and that's what my point is. The language we use is according to that one-dimensional view, or the my way or the highway attitude of anxiety. And yeah, well, let's proceed.
Well, what's the issue? But of course, the further you go, you begin to understand what the issue is. Begin to understand what the issue is. In an acceptable way.
Look at me. This is my campus now.
For many of us, just dipping into the internet and looking at some of these people, you think, well, what's the issue? But of course, the further you go, you begin to understand what the issue is.
Just 5 months ago, she was barred from the UK for this stunt.
I think this is one of the occasions that led to her banning in the UK.
It is. It occurs in Luton. She's got a number of signs there and some posters, which are deeply offensive. I mean, I would be offended by them.
Yeah, I find it offensive. I find it very offensive.
Is that hate speech?
Yes, I think it is. It breaches not only the hostility and contempt provisions, but it's also causing public disorder. I think it's very incumbent on us to understand how many people do feel like that or are willing to support these sorts of views. Let's make them visible.
Ko te ate awa te iwi, ko ngā te raukau a te hapu, no pāmutana.
That's Maori talking.
Ko Elliot, aho. Probably for the last, I guess, 16, 17 years, I've spent both my professional and personal life working within our at-risk community and at-risk partner.
Youth worker Elliot Ekile lives in South Auckland.
It's a mixed area, and by mix, I suppose I mean mixed in every way. Gero is one of the only ones.
He's helped dozens of teenagers find their way.
I've seen young people who I've worked with at airports or working in a high-level job, or they're alive, or I see them sometimes on Facebook and they're smiling and they're happy.
He's also a staunch conservative and a big fan of the Canadian peer.
Topics that she's speaking about, I think, are incredibly important for our society. We seem to be on a trajectory somewhere. I'm a little uncomfortable with where that trajectory is going.
And you don't tell me what I am allowed to hear, what I am allowed to think. I'll make my own decisions.
Free speech is incredibly important in this country.
You know, I'll just say that free speech is incredibly important. Okay, so what he's saying, actually, while he believes that anxiety is wisdom, while he is not aware that consciousness is real, what he's actually saying is that consciousness is really important. That's what he's really saying. This is absolutely a battle between anxiety and consciousness, right? Okay, and what he just said, he wants to, promote the importance of consciousness, creativity, and so look, I'll fast forward it because he's from South Auckland, and he's had the same kind of reaction to what he does in his advocacy for consciousness as Lauren Southern have, as I get actually. Okay, so we'll fast forward a little bit.
multiculturalism doesn't work. We are a bicultural society. Kaupapa Māori, kaupapa Britain.
Do you think that's under threat?
I think that as soon as you impinge on free speech, all bets are off. The concern that we have is the system,
Yeah, you see, he's right, because if we haven't got consciousness, we've got nothing. You know, we've got nothing, man. Because consciousness is everything about us. Consciousness is why we know that wealthy people are horribly wrong in thinking and promoting the idea that wealth is the height of civilization, when it's not. Okay, family is, friends is, being creative is. Actually, money is actually quite the hindrance for creativity, actually, because it becomes a case of, you know, it's too easy to find answers, and it, you know, because people are wealthy, it totally changes what questions they think are important, actually, and so it actually becomes the creative experience and say even the depth of intellect becomes quite shallow because of that ease of answers, you know.
Codes, the laws, the cultural practices that kaupapa Britain.
Do you think that's under threat?
I think that as soon as you impinge on free speech, all bets are off. The concern that we have is the system, the codes, the laws, the cultural practices that are to be maintained as part of a nation. That's the issue.
Can you put yourself in the shoes of that community and imagine the most offensive thing someone could say coming here to your home? Wouldn't you be offended if somebody came here and said that?
First off, in terms of what Lauren did, I think it was a very measured response. I would say that she's provoking a response in order to engage in discourse.
I'm everything that they're against.
You see that? She believes I'm everyone they're against. Actually, Stephan Molyneux and Southern Stephan aren't even talking about other cultures. They are talking about Caucasian culture, Caucasian civilization, and the very finely balanced social beliefs that are needed to keep Western society in its good spot, right? So this proves that the anxiety and courage thing, the anxiety and consciousness, she's completely disassociated from what they're actually talking about, and that's evidence of what I'm saying is true. See, anxiety is really attention seeking, and it's heavily promotes self-interest, right? And so this is what she's doing. She's trying to draw attention to herself away from consciousness making its expression. You know, and she right? I know this camera's shit, so sorry about that. She wants to draw people's attention away from the expression of consciousness and take it down the rabbit hole of anxiety. So let's just see what she says about her perspective.
Muslim, I'm black, I'm a refugee, I'm a feminist.
Community leader Fatoumata Ba and Lauren Southern are the same age.
Having a young person with such extreme ideas that almost reverse humanity back 100 or so years is something really hard to understand.
For her, Southern and Molyneux have no place in New Zealand.
I'd like to think that we've kind of surpassed that time, you know, where we believe that one race is better and above all. And I think that's fundamentally the message that these individuals are bringing.
Living here since the age of 3, Fatoumata has seen firsthand where that message can lead.
We're going to Post Pass, and then a Pākehā middle-aged woman thought that she would be friendly and offer us a ride.
See, she's now about to tell you a single instance is the norm. She's going to See, this is where anxiety is really a king, eh? Passing off speculation as the truth. Okay? She's now about to tell you something where she actually wants you to believe this is the case with all of the experience. Okay? And which is passing off speculation as the truth. And in fact, that's entirely anxiety's A game. Passing off speculation as the truth is entirely his A game. And the only reason she's doing that is because she knows conventional wisdom is that anxiety is wisdom. Okay? So in her promoting anxiety as virtuous, in her replicating the function of anxiety and promoting anxiety as wisdom, this is anxiety in the imperative. Okay? Because it's being assertive. It's replicating the function of anxiety to control what other people think. Okay? And in this situation, it's actually quite serious, because the media has made it a mainstream cultural issue. Okay, so we'll carry on.
To the airport, for us, that was kind of noted that, okay, you don't belong here, you need to get out. For some people, the fact that I even might, wear my hijab is a sign of my extremism.
The reality is, the state of New Zealand is changing, and a new campaign celebrating the words of Kate Shepherd recognises this.
Even though it's been 125 years since we have received the vote, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Those which appeal to the principles.
See, it's just quickly. She just then said that she considers herself as a New Zealander. Okay, right. So she's at one. So at one end, she's carrying herself and promoting herself as completely different from mainstream society. And now she's using the emotional leverage that she's actually a Kiwi as well.
Of justice and equity. With the right to free speech is the responsibility to do so in a manner where you don't cross the line that is hate.
See, you know what? It's anxiety that wants free. It's anxiety that wants to have free speech. Okay, that's what's going on. Anxiety wants free. See, consciousness, right, knows that it is expected of people to be creative. Consciousness knows. Everybody knows. The primary means of expressing consciousness is with the voice. Okay? So really what this is it's just the typical anxiety where someone believes that anxiety is wisdom. It's actually that anxiety wants free speech and everyone else has to shut up. Okay? And so this is the importance of what I'm saying, is that the revelation of the 8 laws exists, right? And this proves that consciousness is real. Okay? And the values of consciousness are real. And this person needs to understand she is consciousness as well. And her physical self is just, compared to consciousness, her physical self is immaterial. Right? That's my opinion, right?
Speech. As long as your message is putting down another group of people because...
Did she just say that? Did she just say that when the media have made it politically correct to run down Caucasians in their own countries? Let's just listen to that again.
A lot of work that needs to be done. Those which appeal to the principles of justice and equity. With the right to free speech is the responsibility to do so in a manner where you don't cross the line that is hate speech. As long as your message is putting down another group of people because of their gender, sexuality, ethnicity, religion, then you are at the point where you're crossing that line.
Coming up, the reality of hate speech in New Zealand.
Something about hoping I will meet a slow death
what to do about it,
Look, I don't think that we can just keep ignoring it.
and where some people think it comes from.
I don't actually believe in the concept of hate speech. You have the right to say stupid things.
Lauren Southern and Stephan Molyneux are in the trenches of what's known as the culture wars. They claim their views are being shut down.
Free speech is under significant attack and is crumbling, in particular in places like New Zealand.
But in the age of the internet, free speech has never been freer.
There's no obvious barriers for many people to saying things that are really extremely hurtful and hateful.
Martin Cocker's team at NetSafe investigates online abuse.
So we're up over about 60 cases a week.
You see this woman here, right? She's hardcore anxiety loyalist. She's hardcore anxiety loyalist. That's why the first statement, as you saw her before, her first statement was to drag up some really traumatic thing from the deep dark past. You know, a little thing about consciousness is it only exists right now. Okay? And that is why forgiveness exists. That's why we forgive. Because we can't be bothered with yesterday because that doesn't even exist anymore. You know, we have to have now. So that she would do that. This is replicating anxiety. But she's a hardcore anxiety loyalist. I'll just play it a little bit and you'll probably get the idea of it.
Violent. That is literally the definition of racism. Holding superiority over another group of people.
You see? See here. So she thinks she's right, of course. She doesn't acknowledge that the fact is that because she values anxiety as wisdom, and she's taught her kids that, really faithfully taught her kids that, as has happened for generations and generations of people. When you do that, when you believe that anxiety is wisdom, you don't value education. Okay, that's why people don't get ahead. That's the reason that some ethnicities are really poor. If you've got religion as your primary cultural pillar, okay, well, the political optics of religion is you don't have to do anything until you die. Okay, that's your important achievement. Your most important achievement you can achieve in your whole life is when you die, you go to heaven. Okay, so there's zero value in education while you believe that. I mean, that's the political optics of that. And so she comes along, and she's one of the many that have come out in the public sphere. You know, they get invited into the public sphere, onto the media, because they can be easily made to look ridiculous and overreacting and not well thought through and all sorts of things like that. Because the wisdom of anxiety actually is very, very shallow. Very, very shallow. And that's why these arguments people have prop up their argument when they're promoting anxiety as wisdom, or promoting anxiety as virtuous, actually don't hold water very much because they're so thin, because there's not enough in reality and the truth to back up their argument. So really, people really heavily rely on the listener believing that anxiety is wisdom, and that's why they're saying it. They think that that's what's politically credible. Okay, so that's all she's got to say, actually. Yeah.
So they drum up and empower people who themselves harbour racist and ignorant, hateful views towards other people.
Like herself does. Tell me something. Is Antifa anti-fascist, or does anxiety believe that courage is the fascist?
And you got some abuse. Something about hoping I will meet a slow death that went on and on and on for quite a long paragraph. And
yeah. You see, this happens to people, right? Because she puts out stuff online soliciting contentious dialogue with people. She puts it out online because it is because it's contentious, because it's offensive to people, and they say things back like she's. So she just says that, like, oh, it's all poor me. It's like, you know, what did I do to deserve this? And actually, she's put in military level intelligence planning into soliciting that response from people. And if you have a look at it, have a bit of an objective look at it, you can see that this is what most people do when they're replicating the functional anxiety. It's actually top level intelligence grade strategy to get to instigate conflict, to initiate conflict, and that's what she's doing. And she see how she's quite comfortable by reading this out, like it's some kind of success she's achieved, eh? So, you know, what does the baby that does not possess language think of all this? Well, even though she's saying this is really bad and it's so unfair and it's frightfully horrible what they're saying, just have a look how much she smiles about it. Just that one statement.
Other racist and ignorant, hateful views towards other people.
And you got some abuse.
Something about hoping I will meet a slow death that went on and on and on for quite a long paragraph, and called me a very, very abusive, offensive language towards me that people call women. Starts with C.
And speaking out...
See, she was smiling the whole time she said it. She was smiling the whole time she said that. The worst conclusion of these insane, you know, bombastic imbeciles threatening her with all sorts of things, and while she read that, she was smiling the whole time. It's because anxiety has achieved success by initiating conflict. That's what it is. That's how seriously she believes that anxiety is wisdom and virtuous. Okay? Here's another guy.
Against hate speech.
See, this guy, he's a loyalist too. He's
a case that I had to report to police because people were making threats of violence against me and my family. I mean, it's very distressing.
So should we be talking to them?
Yes, I think the media should talk to them, and you should challenge them.
Oh, finally, 12 and a half minutes into it.
Right now, the Western world is one front. We are fighting for one of the greatest civilizations that has ever existed, and we're throwing it all away just for the idea that we need to be tolerant.
We have spoken to some Muslims in New Zealand who are afraid, though, that the messages that you bring may lead to them facing some kind of abuse, whether it be physical or online. What?
See, I'll have to say something for Lauren, right? You know, everyone in New Zealand that's here, including the Muslims, they know that Kiwis don't mind that they're here. Okay, they don't mind it. Okay, and so there's some foreign people that come across people that are racist, and so you see what it is you know that instance there, you get these actually racist people. I mean, some people beat some people up because they are racist. I mean, it's true. But what's really going on is their consciousness feels so squeezed by this Western world thing, because for a long time they have been squeezing Caucasian society to maintain political control, and they've used the replication of the function of anxiety. I mean, recently in New Zealand we've had the housing bubble, which has caused a lot of anxieties, man. Now that housing bubble thing has very much changed the banking finance arrangements, it's changed the mortgages. It's had a very big flow-on impact to regulate that there should be a huge increase in house prices so that Kiwis can't buy a house, because that is the political optics of what's happened on that level. So you get these people reacting, right? This is after a long history of stress and frustration. Okay? And that has to be included in it. But mainly the real catalyst of this frustration is its consciousness is getting squeezed up. And at a macro level, it's just the like in Auckland, which is the big city, there are a lot of foreign people living in Auckland. A lot of foreign. I've been in Auckland in my car at a intersection, right, and literally every single person I could see were probably Chinese. Okay, now see, Chinese think that's perfectly normal for there to be lots of Chinese around the place. But you see, people that remember what it was like beforehand, they are very, very sensitive to that there is so many Chinese around, right? Now I'm over it, I'm past it, you know. this is like 15 years ago. They were talking about this in the media. The Asian invasion, they used to call it. And but I think, you know, the thing is that we're all actually consciousness. And I tell you what, Chinese people, they operate kind of a similar way to Kiwis, right? That's why they get along. That's why it's like they're peaceful and humble, and they're hard-working as, man, and they like planning. They're smart, and actually this is like Kiwis. So anyway, yeah, sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt this.
What they're afraid of is not that I'm advocating the harm of other people. They're afraid of their worldview being critiqued. I don't shut down.
See, there you go. That is anxiety. It is anxiety that is fearful of having its worldview being critiqued. This is one of those common elements of anxiety. That will cause anxiety to react against you. And so everyone knows this. And so, yeah, anyway.
Freedom of speech, you must welcome opposing views.
Not that I'm advocating the harm of other people. They're afraid of their worldview being critiqued. I don't shut down those who...
freedom of speech, you must welcome opposing views.
Of course. I love opposing views. I love people...
So she could have said, well, why have these people got a problem with what we're saying then? She could have said that. Why have these people got a problem with what we're saying then? You see how disassociated from reality, cognitive dissonance this is causing. This belief in that anxiety is wisdom, right? Let's carry on.
People who disagree with me. I have plenty of people in the Islamic community who say the most hateful, awful things about me, and I think they should have every right to their free speech.
Now this is true. I agree with this, and you know what? In the realms of Islam, as they have been published on YouTube, a couple of 3 years ago they used to go through YouTube with absolute threats of violence. You know, big signs with total threats of violence. Behead those that insult Islam. And so actually, effectively, what they're saying is, if you disagree with us at all, we're going to kill you. And that is replicating the function of anxiety, right? And you probably all saw those vids of London, the protests in London, the big signs, you know, absolute, you know, anyway.
The problem is that we in the West are very tolerant of other people, but what about the cultures that aren't tolerant of us?
Yeah. See, that's a very good point. We've proved that we are very tolerant. We enjoy the company of, you know, other cultures, man. We do. And she's, you know, it's just stating an observation, okay? But the reporter's going, but. Let's see what she says.
People with different values and beliefs can live and exist side by side.
Except when you're promoting anxiety as wisdom, and courage is there first. See, this is the thing. They want to apply one set of values to one side of this and another set of values to the other side. See, that's what's maddening to consciousness, because consciousness doesn't operate that way. Consciousness does have equitable kind of thing for each person, right? For whoever. And it's that they can't figure this out. They're not cognitive of this in this discussion, and in any discussion. This is very, very surprising, man. It's like, because as she just pointed out, they're going around in circles. This is a pattern of circular logic, so big time, eh? It's like unbelievable, man. Okay, we'll carry on.
They don't. We see people segregating, self-segregating into areas.
Correct. Very correct.
We might as well have balkanized.
It's also a case of the media engineering a them and us mentality, which is actually that's a replication of the function of anxiety as well, because that's what anxiety does. You get all the people around that you can talk into your anxiety, and then it's them against us.
They don't. We see people segregating, self-segregating into areas. We might as well have balkanized states within our country. And
that's an absolute fact. That is an absolute fact. You know, and it's so like you're stepping into a different country. Now again, this really does not happen much in New Zealand, except for South Auckland. But actually everywhere else. See, the fact is that this happens in some of these places, but everywhere else is a Caucasian thing. Everywhere else down the country is Caucasian. Okay, everything else. I mean, except for their own persons. Okay, except for their own persons. Every other thing in our environment, except for their own persons and the natural environment, has been created by Caucasian spirituality. I'm talking about everything, man. I'm talking about computers, glass, metal, electricity, the internet, TV screens, sunglasses, videos, DVDs, Xboxes, clothing, galore, and all sorts of chemicals that help us out. You know, vehicles, trucks, fuel. All of this Western experience is down to Caucasian spirituality, actually. That's
I mean, it's natural.
Yeah, I'll just point out, every time the reporter interrupts her, she's trying to promote anxiety as wisdom. It's being interrupted like that is replicating the function of anxiety as events in the mind, because as you know, that's what anxiety does to your thinking, right? And so every time she does that, that's how, yeah.
For if Somalis come to Auckland, for people to live together because they share a language, they miss home. That doesn't mean that they want to create a little Somalia and take over Auckland.
Well, and that's the thing. They do create their own little communities, and if they become the majority, that means
if you think
look
like
at
that,
it. Everyone
look
becomes
at it happen.
You don't have, yeah. There are a lot of threats to our civilization.
Yeah, I'll just say this: that you know what. See, what I'm saying is, see how more obvious a facet of human nature is there to gravitate to people who are the same as you. This is one of the most obvious things about human beings. They do it with everything. They do it with music. They totally do it with ethnicity, right? Okay, with race. They fully do it with race. They do it with cars. Okay, they do it with musicians, bands, right? They do it with clothing brands. They do it with everything. They do it with towns. They do it with sports teams. Everything. We gravitate to people because consciousness wants to communicate, and part of that is being listened to, and this is why we gravitate to people that are similar to us. Okay, so again, you know, I'll just say at this point, all of this problem, all of this issue that's being talked about here is because people believe that anxiety is wisdom. And when people believe that anxiety is wisdom, it evaporates the concept of wisdom. And when people that believe that anxiety is wisdom, it also evaporates the concept of anxiety. Okay? And so this is a situation, you get this jumbled mental case kind of a situation where there's all this cognitive dissonance. This is frightening, man, I tell you what. So I know this. There is absolutely a paradigm shift right around the corner from this. Because according to this has all been promoted by the central banking system, I believe. Because they printed so much money and they diluted the currency so much, because that's what money printing does, it dilutes currency, the value of currency. See, they can't actually operate anymore. And they're doing all this, they're promoting all this problem in the media, flooding the West with like third world people to try and cover their tracks. And it's not going to work. Okay, we're onto them. And so that's why the media call like the Charlottesville protest thing over there, you know, the march, they're white nationalists, man, though, because that's literally the only thing they can say while they believe that anxiety is wisdom. That's actually what it looks like to them. And if they think that anxiety is wisdom, if they believe that, well, then they don't have any other beliefs outside that. Have you noticed that? They don't have any other beliefs outside the anxiety view. And one other thing I know is that people that believe that anxiety is wisdom don't have any feelings. Okay, they don't have any feelings. They are in full competition mode all the time with whoever. With whoever gets in their way, eh? And that's replicating the function of anxiety again. So let's carry on.
Are we prepared to make this beautiful sign even more beautiful?
When Lauren Southern talks about her civilization, what she means is white people.
The statement.
See, this is why. This is obvious. See, we have Western civilization. It's not because we're white people. It's because of our spirituality. Okay, and this is a big deal to me because religion, okay, even though it started way back when, you know, okay, what the chief thing religion does is it separates us from our spirituality. Okay, because we aren't allowed to do any of these naturally instinctive things like be creative and communicate. Okay, and so. But to say that we are not in contact with the engine of the universe, and we're separated from that, and that's not a part of us. While it's like that, and only through religion can we get to that. See, this is like that. Well, that's a replication of the function of anxiety to do that, even though it's highly composed and it's like amazing as, man. Actually, it's the same event as this racism thing. It's separating people from their own spirituality because they're tricked into having a conflict to try and explain themselves. You know? And I believe that if I get resourced, right, and I should have had a meeting today to do that, I'll go around everywhere and I'll explain to them that race actually doesn't exist. It's consciousness that exists. And we are trying to see through the eyes of this physical person. You know, and so anyway, let's carry on.
It's okay to be white should not be provocative. It shouldn't be daring. It doesn't matter what happened historically to say that it is okay that I've been born with the skin color I'm in. I am not responsible for the
because we all
crimes.
sit in a context. There's a lot of historical context to white and what it is to be white, what it is.
See there, yeah, bringing in the past into it, eh? Yeah, something to create doubt. Okay, something to actually segue away from the tabled subject. Okay, yeah, that's what anxiety loves doing. And so that she's brought the past into now. This is very obvious. It's actually a potent, replication of anxiety doing that, transposing what's happening today into the ancient past, because nobody can do anything nobody can change the past. And that's what anxiety wants. It doesn't want to change anything about the political landscape while it is believed that it is the moral authority, because of the belief that anxiety is wisdom, right? And so she does. That's why she did that. See, the human brain, right, it instinctively intuits what it needs to do. And while anxiety has hijacked consciousness, anxiety has all the cognitive power of consciousness at its disposal. So this is what you got, is you've got the whole power of consciousness, capable of all those, perceiving all those detailed nuances, right, all focused down to this really narrow band of perspective, which is the belief that anxiety is wisdom, right? And so that's what's going on. And so, anyway.
Is to be black and who's oppressed.
Should
and
that
who isn't
change the
oppressed.
fact of it being okay to be one race or another? Because no one has a choice over that.
Would you say you're privileged?
No more than anyone else that was born in a Western country.
Their views and what they represent have been privileged forever. White supremacy, racism.
that we value education, maybe, and other people, different people to us, seem to value having a problem. Maybe that's what makes us different, and that's what we don't like about people, because if they don't value education, that must mean they're unconscious, and if they're not conscious, if they're not challenging conscious, they must have an illness of some kind. What kind of sickness does that? Holy moly.
Bigotry. If you don't have an analysis of power, privilege and oppression alongside your desire for freedom of speech, then you are not standing for true freedom of speech.
Yeah, so just an issue with that little statement. She's lived her whole life in the modern world, in the first world, New Zealand, and yet she thinks we need to do a study on our recent heritage. I don't think it's going to help understand. See, she's been witnessing and experiencing what she wants to do a study on something she's been witnessing and experiencing her whole life. So this is the fraud that anxiety is. See, that's just actually, appropriating the discussion to waste people's time, which is replicating anxiety. I mean, this is not the thing. See, you know what? While people think that consciousness doesn't exist, you're never going to get anywhere with this discussion at all. It's just going to be it's just going to make people look stupid, right, the whole time. Because that's the fact. She wants to go and have a study about something she's experienced her whole life, what we all have, to understand better what's going on. In the words of Donald Trump, she's fired, mate. That is just... Yeah, anyway. Sorry. Hey, I'll just say again, I'm pretty sorry about this camera. I don't know what's wrong with it, but we'll carry on.
A middle-class white person arriving here from Canada in virtually every dimension is not disadvantaged, is not a victim.
So, yeah, actually, he just said that. Now, actually, what he's saying there, he thinks that all the other ethnicities are disadvantaged and are victims, right? But it's not Caucasians' fault. Maybe that if they valued education, they wouldn't be having any of this problem. So what is causing them to not value education? Oh, it's worshipping anxiety as virtuous, right? It's worshipping anxiety, and day in, day out, expressing instances of loyalty to anxiety, right? That's what that is. If they, white privilege is that we value education. That's what it looks like to them, who don't value education. That's their rationale to rationalise it in their own minds according to the belief that anxiety is wisdom. And so that's what I think is going on there. Because that's the only difference between us and them, is we value education and they don't. And that's why they haven't built anything out of their civilizations, like, and I'll say that, right? I'll say that, and that's a fair comment, right? But actually, I'll say this, that actually being at harmony and having this equilibrium with the natural environment, that's what a lot of other cultures have done. And I think that's what we're missing in the Western world. And so I'm not one to judge that they have stopped development, as it were. It's like the Scottish did that when the English went up there like 1,000 years ago. They look like total barbarian savages, but actually they had learnt to live exactly in harmony with nature, and they didn't feel that going beyond that, that it wasn't right to go beyond that, actually, because this is deep. This is really deep, heritage of Caucasian people. of respecting of the natural environment and being in awe of just being alive and that we are even only here. It's like, so anyway, here's Stephan.
Stephan, if the claims that race is linked to IQ is something that you've promoted.
I've had a wide variety of experts on the show who have talked about.
Anyway, there's the phone. Okay, better go.